Okay, this is actually going to be looking at Isaac's cult evaluation sheet. I'm pretty sure he's got it on neopagan.net. This particular page came from paganfederation.org slash WP dash content slash upload slash 2004 slash 03, and then there's some more dots. But Isaac Bonwitz cult evaluation. It's a very wonderful thing. It can keep you from running. You know, if you start getting involved with the group and you start feeling funny but you don't know why, and everyone else seems to be really happy. I noticed this back in high school when I was trying to get involved in a Jesus freak fundamentalist Christian group. And I didn't have his knowing here, but I ended not because things didn't quite feel right. They kept making it sound like women were to blame and all sorts of stuff, and I ended up backpedaling. But I wish I'd had this then because I would have been able to point out and say, this is why. Because they kept saying, well, why don't you? And I go, but any group that could become a cult. Isaac has 18 factors to consider, and then he gives you a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is very low amount or very low percentage, to 10 is high, pretty much. And he does basically, first he talks about internal control. You know, when you're in the group, what does the leader do to the people inside? How much control is put on when you're in there? There's something I really like where he says, lack of clearly defined organizational rights for members. Never thought about that till this. External control. How how much directing of members' external political, social behavior, how much when they get out in the real world. Say they get jobs out there, well, does that mean that they can talk about where they are or must they stay low key? Things like that. Then the next two deal with wisdom and knowledge claimed. How much is claimed by the leader or leaders? Are they infallible? Are you allowed to disagree with them, or, hey, I said it, therefore, if you don't like it, you're doomed? And then the next category, credited to the leaders by members. Do the leaders trust the members, and do the members especially trust the decisions of the leaders? And how much, and this is interesting, how much hostility do the members have toward critics, both within and without of their group? The next category is dogma. Rigid, how rigid is their concepts of reality? How much inflexibility or fundamentalism is there, and how much hostility toward relativism, situa- I'm really good with big words some days. Basically, do they give you wiggle room? Are you allowed to think about the situation and make a decision due to what's happening now, or must you always, this is it? He then talks about recruiting. And one of the things that really struck me later on after I'd left the New Kadampa Buddhist tradition was, and I won't get into details, but one of the monks was talking about how one new female member was a real true goddess in the special form. She was so good at bringing people in. And the way she brought them in, I'm going, that feels sleazy. But again, I didn't know. I was in this group because it's all I had. I didn't have this. Well, so anyway, and then front groups. I think this is especially interesting because there's a group called the New Apostolic Reformation, which was behind the DC-40 problem we had. And they basically have all sorts of offshoots. The Jesus Heals Rooms International, I think, is a very discreet group associated with this. And they're very much, they sound really lovey-dovey until once you let them do their thing to you, if you try to give a blessing back, so, oh no, we don't want your filthy stuff touching us. So and then also wealth. Amount of money and property desired or obtained by the group. Do the members keep donating? The lifestyle. I mean, I know a preacher here in town. When I grew up in that church, wasn't anything like what he's doing now, but he's got some kind of teeny, well, compared to the ones I saw down in Georgia, a teeny mega church, and they live a lifestyle. The kids are spoiled rotten, according to a guy who had to go out and do some repairs there. It's just, the ordinary people just can't make it meet. Sexual manipulation. I'm not going to need to say much more of that, but especially of non tantric groups. But even in some groups that practice things, is there a case of respect, things like that? Sexual favoritism. This is actually something you'll find most anywhere. Are you getting advancement because of having activity with your boss or the leader or what? Censorship. The amount of control over your access to outside opinions on this group. Can you actually do research where you are and discover that what you're involved in something is unpleasant? Isolation. And this sort of comes back to censorship too. Amount of effort to keep you from communicating with non members, including family, friends, lovers. Um, Dropout control. If you say you decide you don't want to be part of the group, in my case, I'd been in the NKT 4 years, and I moved somewhere else, and they were glad to get rid of me because I was contaminating their energy stream because I was so eccentric. That's usually rare. Usually, groups want to keep you in, they want to keep you quiet, they don't want you to have any chance of getting out. Violence. Amount approved when used by for the group, its doctrines, or leaders. I was pretty lucky, but there are groups that, you know, they will use violence to keep people from getting out. Paranoia. Now, we're in a time period where paranoia, unfortunately, is very life saving in many ways. It depends on the level of paranoia. Some paranoia keeps you alive. Too much, I think, will kill you. But here he talks about amount of fear concerning real or imagined enemies, exaggeration of perceived power of opponents, prevalence, conspiracy theories. Unfortunately, with the politics going on, the conspiracy theories are being proven to be true and not theories. Grimness. Oh, I love this one. I never thought about it, but amount of disapproval about how you can joke about, how you can joke about yourself? Well, apparently some groups, you try to make a joke about yourself being a member in this way, and they don't like it. Surrendering of your will. Amount of emphasis on members not being responsible for personal decisions, degree of disempowerment created by the group, its doctrines, or its leaders. That I've seen that in the pagan community a couple times. This guy was forming a group, sounded good to begin with, and then by the time I dropped out, this young kid had told this man to marry someone else, and he had quote plans for me in the temple. I'm saying, oh, wait a minute. Well, this is supposed to be sort of a cooperative group of people living a pagan lifestyle, and now you're turning it into your own little cult. Nope, no thanks. And finally, hypocrisy. Amount of approval for actions which the group officially condemns or is immoral, yet when done by the group or its leaders, willing to violate it for political, psychological, social, economic, military, or other gain. These are the 18 he says. And I've been looking a lot at them, and when I look at groups now, I look at some of these things. So I will try to put a link on the YouTube channel if possible to go with this so that you can find it. But be safe. Be safe and smart.